the thing about the hostages is interesting because it turned out, I think we've talked about this before, but we got in a lot of trouble, at least I did, because I was somebody who said, that what Hamas did on October 7th was a military raid, not an act of terrorism. It was a well-executed military raid. No, it was an act of terrorism, Scott. 1,200 innocent Israelis were slaughtered by Hamas. No. Fully a third of those were
Don't
soldiers.
tell Piers Morgan that.
I'll tell Piers Morgan head to his face. I'll say it straight up. So close, I'll be spitting on him when I speak if he wants. But the point is, a third of them were military, which means that Hamas kicked the living snot out of the Israeli military that morning. But the rest of them, they weren't killed by Hamas. And the Israelis have finally admitted it. And I'm not talking about admitting it on the periphery, where you have a hostage, being released saying, no, man, they fired in the building. They killed everybody. It was the Israelis who did that. Or Apache helicopters appeared and they just indiscriminately killed everything. The official Israeli government report is, yeah, we probably killed most of those people, but we don't want to investigate because it would be too harmful to the psychology of the Israeli nation at this time to know the truth. So we're shutting this thing down. We're not going to talk about it anymore. But I'm here to tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, that all those party revelers, they weren't killed by Hamas. Some of them were, of course. I'm not pretending that Hamas didn't kill anybody. They did. But the majority of them died in a crossfire between Hamas and the Israeli police, where the Israeli police fired indiscriminately into the mob. They panicked. They brought in the helicopters, and the helicopters flattened everything. Hamas, they didn't discriminate. And when the Israeli army finally pushed into the kibbutzes, and you had hundreds of Israelis in their houses, held hostage by Hamas fighters who, for the most part, were prepared to exchange the hostages for their freedom, the tanks fired into the buildings and killed everybody. The Israeli army killed 80+% of the Israeli civilians who died on October 7th. And that's the God's honest truth, which, again, underscores the incompetence of the Israeli military and the political problem that Netanyahu faces. They were releasing hostages. They had that 6-day pause, and hostages were being released, exchanged for prisoners, etc. And then they stopped. Since then, Israel has recovered the bodies of 2 hostages who appeared to have been killed by the Israelis. They launched a hostage rescue mission to get a 3rd guy. It failed. The hostage was killed by the Israelis in this, who lost a couple of their elite commandos in the process. And so now the hostage families are going to Netanyahu saying, wait a minute, did you implement the Hannibal-Doktrin against civilians? The Hannibal-Doktrin, of course, being the notion that Israel will kill a soldier before they allow that soldier to be taken prisoner by a terrorist organization, Hamas, Hezbollah, etc. Hannibal-Doktrin. So it's pretty tough. So here, give you an example of real life stuff, guys. Hamas went in and they captured an Israeli intelligence facility. That was where the Israelis had their human intelligence capability, right there on the guy, because they never thought Hamas was coming over. So they kept it nestled right up there. And so all the servers that have all the names and the contact information and the history of reporting of all the human intelligence assets inside Gaza, and the case officers who run these guys are right there in that building, and Hamas captured it. And they took all the servers. That's why the next day, a whole bunch of Palestinian informers were dead, because Hamas went, you've been spying for Israel? Pop, dead. The Israelis went blind, which is another reason why their military campaign's suffering, right? Because they don't have any intelligence. They lost everything. They lost the human intelligence. They lost the SIGINT, because the 8200 unit was likewise attacked. Their servers taken. But these guys captured some of the case officers, the spy runners, and they're moving them into Gaza. And the Israelis are going, kill them all. And so they were sending their helicopters and everything in to stop this guy, literally slaughtering Israeli civilians because it's indiscriminate. They said, kill everybody because we can't let Hamas get their hands on these people. The Hannibal-Doktrin. Israel lost control of the Gaza defense belt, and they lost control, custody of their own people. So the Israeli military was implementing the Hannibal-Doktrin, full broad spectrum on everybody. They killed everybody because they couldn't allow Hamas to capture these people. You know, all those Israeli soldiers, the females right now, you have the Israelis saying they're holding on to female hostages. Dude, they're prisoners of war. They're women who worked in the Combat Intelligence Corps. They primarily come from a battalion called Unit 414. These are the wall watchers. These are the girls that sat there at the computers and watched all the imagery. They had the remote control cannons that could fire. And sadly, they weren't issued any weapons. So when Hamas broke through and came into their base, all these girls could do is run into a room. And there was a video. It's a very sad video because you're watching this, and these are girls in their night clothes, in their underwear, and they're just sitting and they're scared to death because it's boom, 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 and Hamas is coming closer. And what happened is Hamas came in, threw in grenades, and killed about 80% of them. So all those beautiful young women who were there, they're dead, they're wounded. The survivors were captured, taken in. These girls know how Israel spied on Hamas. So Hamas is getting great intelligence from them. And so Israel's saying, you got to release them. And Hamas going, they ain't getting released. They're soldiers. You know, they're these aren't, you know, this isn't mom, pa, and the little kid that we took as a negotiating chip. These are soldiers, and you're going to pay a heavy price to get them back. And so you put all this together and you see the total untenable position that Benjamin Netanyahu's in. And now we add to it that Biden has told Netanyahu, not only will you stop doing what you're doing by the end of the year, but you got to go. And this is something that Biden has told Netanyahu. Your government at a minimum has got to go. We can't tolerate these people anymore, and you've got to go. Benjamin Netanyahu is operating on a 4% approval rating.